during the off-season-ish type work, the goal is to increase that running mileage per week. And it doesn't have to be the 10% rule of increasing. And I know that's like a really common thing, which can be a really good governor to make sure people aren't going crazy. But during that off season, you want to increase that total weekly mileage. And then once you go into like that in season, closer to whatever race you're doing, you want to increase your longer runs. So most of the time when people are doing like an ultra marathon, they dedicate at least one day a week where they're doing this longer run that could range from 15 miles to however long, depending on what their goal is.
The Fitness Movement is brought to you by Zor Fitness. We offer coaching and individualized program design, as well as educational content for coaches and athletes. It's all one place, zorfitness.com.
Have you ever like not talked for a long time and then like you go to say something and like your words come out all jumbled? Like, I needed to warm up to talk.
Yeah, that happened to me when I was in like Texas for a bit because I was like living on my own and stuff. And so like, especially on the weekends, I would just live my life. Like I'd go to Walmart, do my food shopping, all that stuff. And like 3 days would go by and I'm like, I haven't said a word to like anyone. Like I haven't used my voice. Yeah.
Problems that I don't have anymore.
Yeah.
I do think the last time I traveled by myself, I was like coaching and I was like, didn't really talk to anybody besides like the athlete I was coaching.
Yeah.
And like his family. And I was like, man, I really don't interact with anybody outside of that. But like that was still enough stimulation for me that like I was cool for the rest of that time not talking to anybody.
It'll wear you out.
Oh yeah.
That's what I realized too, like when I travel and stuff, it's like I don't really communicate with anyone. Like if I'm by myself, like I end up not talking.
Yeah.
Because I just yeah.
Well, for me, travel's like a stressful thing. Like I don't do super well with it. So like I'm so good about like my routine. It's like when I get out of that, it's not good.
No, I hate traveling, and I think that's the issue I have with living so far away from family. I know, and it sucks. I like absolutely hate it. So I have a hard time like with it because I want to visit my family like often and go to Massachusetts, but I hate traveling, and getting there is a nightmare because it is a long flight, and then it's always a mess. There's always delays. I hate ruining my routine. Like I freaking hate it, man.
Oh gosh. Well, the good thing about travel is that you get to run whenever you want. Because a terrible segue, but I feel like that was like actually like one of the things that like I've consistently been able to give people is like you can get a good run workout in no matter where you're at. You might not be able to do other CrossFit training, but like running will be great. But
yeah, and that's one reason why like I kind of gravitated towards like doing the whole running thing, because like knowing that I travel often and all that, when I would go home, it was always like a struggle getting a CrossFit workout in or whatever modality of training that requires a lot of equipment and time versus a run. It's like I could find a treadmill or I could run outside and it'll work out.
Yeah.
So it's super easy to stay consistent. If you're staying in a hotel, like there's always, even if it's a crappy hotel gym, there's always going to be a treadmill.
Like, yeah, throw a treadmill in there.
Yeah.
A couple janky dumbbells and a treadmill. You're good.
Exactly. I was in one the other day for military, and the hotel wasn't nice at all, and their hotel gym was even worse, but there was a treadmill, so it was like, hey, it worked. Wasn't ideal, but it had that. It didn't even have dumbbells, so It was just a treadmill and two ellipticals.
Yeah. I feel like that's like probably actually like, you know, not competitive CrossFit, but just like CrossFit as a methodology. Like you can actually get away with a lot. Like you can do a burpee, air squat, push-up, well, that's basically the same thing as burpee, but whatever, lunges and body weight movements and some running in there, and just make it like, a fun, like, body weight piece. And it's like, it's very adaptable. Whereas like when you're a competitive CrossFitter, a lot of that, like, you need to touch on like the higher barrier to entry stuff, like the high skill, complexity, more coordination involvement. You need to touch on that stuff more often. So it's like, it's like equipment demanding, it's joint demanding, it takes more time for warm up. It becomes a mess. We should probably talk about fitness when you're traveling sometime. That'd probably be good. So it's not what we're talking about today, but it'd be good.
I feel like I can talk about that a bit just because of all the different situations I've been in, like in deployments when it's like you have absolutely nothing versus when you're going to a nice gym, a nice vacation in Hawaii. You probably have a little bit more access to things, and you could drop in at a nice CrossFit gym since they have a few nice ones out there.
Yep. Again, unrelated, but like I think the last 2 years, I competed right after, I think this might have been 2 years ago. I competed right after vacation. So I like bought a shorty bar to take in my trunk and took all like the bumpers and everything and was like doing handstand walks on like pavement, and it was a pain, but made it work.
I remember when I did something similar when I traveled to Texas, and I had to be in Texas for a few months for military stuff. And so I was staying at, like, renting out like an Airbnb type thing. And I asked the owner, I was like, is there space available anywhere inside the house where I can like do workouts? And he's like, well, there's an empty garage. And I was like, perfect. I brought a few bumper plates. I brought my barbell, and I brought like my D-ball. And I was like, here we go. And like a weighted vest and stuff, and 35-pound dumbbells. And I brought that so that I had that available to me, even though I did have the base gym as well. But I heard through like, talking to people that it would get super packed. So I was like, okay, so, I have worst case scenario, I could do everything inside in this space at the Airbnb, and it worked out.
And you're super fit now. All right, I guess we can talk about what we're going to talk about, which honestly, I feel like a lot of our conversations lately have just been like me picking your brain on some stuff, which is fine. Other people can probably get something out of it, I hope. But like, this is probably personally something that I've kind of shifted I don't want to say I've shifted my mindset, but what I've actually written for athletes has changed a lot over the last 2 years relative to running specifically. And I think the biggest change for that, it was less about that, like I had this like big shift in like what I believed or something like that. It was like literally what I saw the needs for athletes changed. It was like people are doing more in-person live competitions and putting less stake on specific like the CrossFit season qualifier structure for like in-gym events. So it was like you move from everybody needs to spend all this time on a rower because that's probably the only erg you're going to get, to now like a lot more ergs have opened up because you're going to have an in-person competition, and it's probably going to be, it's easy to do a run event. Whereas like that you don't need to have, a bunch of runners or some other erg. It's like, it's an easy way to get a cyclical test, and that's like a good test of fitness. And I feel like also it's just like such a good modality to build fitness in for a CrossFitter. And it's just like so fundamental as a human being that it's just good training either way. So all that to say is like I've increased the frequency and just like total amount of running in the athletes programs quite a bit over the last 2-3 years for those reasons. And I guess as I've thought about that and like the needs of a CrossFit athlete versus athletes who like you, who like you're an endurance athlete, it's like, I don't want to say they're two fundamentally different things, but even if someone was like a weightlifter, they're going to weightlift every day. Like I have CrossFitters who definitely do not weightlift every day in terms of like snatch and clean and jerk. So it's like when that's the only thing you're doing, you can dedicate all your resources to it, and the frequency of which you touch that thing is probably going to be different. Again, if you're a swimmer, you swim every day, at least once a day. It's like if you're a cyclist, you're on your bike every day, pretty much. Yeah, and I feel like if you're a professional runner, you run virtually every day. Do you agree with me so far, or anything you want to push back on?
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and like we see that with, like you said, the pure sport athletes. If someone is a pitcher on a baseball team, they're going to be throwing very, very frequently, where the average human is not going to be doing that. So that's where you'll see they've adapted to that over time because they've been doing it for a while, so they could handle that crazy load of doing it over and over and over again. If you were to ask me to go throw a few balls, I'd probably feel some soreness the next day and my shoulders and rotator cuff, and some maybe won't feel so great, and it's a new stimulus that's added to me. It's not something that I do every day. But yeah, you'll see that a lot with those pure sport athletes, pure endurance athletes. They're running very frequently, where the average human, you may be like, you probably don't want to run every day. You're not adapted to it, and there's many factors that go into that too. Yeah.
Yep. So, what for yourself when you started like increasing your running? Did that start with like run frequency? Did it start with just like building out volume in individual sessions, a combination of the two? Like what did that process look like for you?
Yeah, for me, I very much based it on feel, because I wasn't sure what I could handle. So it's you'll see people who kind of crumble very quickly and maybe start getting like a knee pain, Achilles pain after increasing their frequency of running after a bit. And for me, my intent during like the first, I would say, month or two was, let me just increase my running frequency and see how I feel with that, in terms of if I get any like soft tissue injuries, if I'm starting to get any nagging pain, and also with like fatigue and recovery. So I started off doing basic, like, hey, 2-3 miles a few times a week. I started off with like 2 times a week, added 3 once I felt comfortable, and started increasing the durations of the run, the mileage. And then I started, after I would say like a few weeks, I started looking a little bit more specifically on the mileage that I was doing and just building on that. But I was very much paying attention like to how I was feeling and how I was holding up.
Yeah, I guess like if I'm looking at this as a coach and I'm like, okay, it's probably not a great idea to just bump up frequency and length of running, right? Like in it per session, right? You might increase frequency and that results in increased mileage throughout a week, or you could increase mileage in each of your individual sessions, keep the frequency the same, and that's increasing volume. But probably not a great idea to do both. Like, okay, let's up the running and add a day.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the same thing with like last time when we were talking on one of these episodes, we talked about like a lot of analogies to like strength training, and it's the same thing with strength training, right? Like I probably wouldn't, if someone's starting with a strength program, I'm not going to increase, most likely I will not increase 2 variables at once. Like I'm not going to increase the load and increase the reps. I'm probably going to do one or the other to kind of see how the body's responding, and to also have a little bit more of like a progression into it versus rushing the process. If it's not needed to increase 2 things at once, then I'm not going to do that, because I kind of want to take that more minimum effective dose approach. And that's kind of how I did it with running, was I focused a little bit more on frequency. Once I felt good with frequency, then that's where I increased the mileage after that.
Yeah. And as I'm thinking about this, what I've done for run training for like my CrossFit athletes, who largely events are unknown and up until like anywhere from like 1 to 3 weeks maybe before their competition, then you'll probably start to get event announcements, versus some runners I have who are doing primarily run focused training. And it's like, especially if they're like, I've had two specific examples of athletes who are like, hey, I haven't been running that much. Like we've been running like maybe twice a week with, maybe 3 to 8K mileage in there per session. So pretty low. It's like, and I signed up for a half marathon or a marathon on this date. And it's like, 3 to 4 months away, let's say. It's like all of a sudden now, like as a coach, I'm like they kind of put so many like constraints because I have to get you ready for that. So we have to like make sure we're like, I don't want to say linearly, but fairly linearly increasing volume up to that point so that you're actually ready to do it. But ideally I would be more like, okay, let's slowly build this up and like pay very close attention to your feedback so that I can like rein it back in if things aren't going the way I want them to, and sort of like basing the progression off the athlete versus building up to a very specific volume I have in mind that's preparing them for a race, and almost like having to just sort of reactively change things as needed based on like if things are like really out of balance in like recovery.
Yeah, and I was talking to someone recently, just kind of picking their brains, someone who's does a bunch of ultra marathons. I was kind of picking their brains because a lot of conversations in terms of running are more that I've been involved in have to do with running as supplemental work or running like recreationally. So my question to him was more about like running for those who are doing feats like an ultra marathon, and he kind of had a similar approach to that. And one thing he mentioned was like during the off-season-ish type work, the goal is to increase that running mileage per week. So you're trying to just increase running mileage, and it doesn't have to be the 10% rule of increasing. And I know that's like a really common thing, which can be a really good governor to make sure people aren't going crazy. But again, you don't have to live and die by that rule. Yeah. Especially if you're already doing high volume, right? 10% could be quite a bit. So again, it could help control people from going too crazy. But during that off season, you want to increase that total weekly mileage. And then once you go into like that in season, closer to whatever race you're doing, you want to increase your longer runs. So most of the time when people are doing like an ultra marathon, they dedicate at least one day a week where they're doing this longer run that could range from 15 miles to however long, depending on what their goal is. And in season, you want to increase that mileage. So instead of focusing on like total weekly mileage, the focus is increasing that. So 1 week, let's say you're doing 15, next week 16, blah blah blah, and just going from there. So I thought that was a cool approach too, just because again, it's looking at it differently than I think how you would with like a recreational or supplemental runner.
Yeah, again, as soon as they have an event, things get a little bit different, right? It's like, if you know you have a 50K coming up, you have to be ready to run 50K. Like, that's really all that matters. Whereas, reverse, back up 6 months prior, it's like you don't have that date on your calendar. You're just kind of generally training. It's like the priority might not be the long run. Like, it might just be like, all right, I'm going to accumulate good work throughout my week, and generally focus on bumping up mileage or maybe holding higher paces or whatever, like some other kind of more like training related goal. Whereas as soon as you have a date on the calendar, then you have to be ready to do that thing. So it's like now the priority is whatever the build, so to speak, towards that of the actual event is. And this is actually making me feel really good about the training I'm currently writing for one of my athletes, because she's getting ready for a marathon and like I don't know how many weeks away now. It's probably I want to say it's November, maybe October. But it basically started, and it was like all 3 sessions were a little bit more, I don't want to say equal, but there wasn't like this one was like way more volume than the other 2. And it's like, as the progression I'm sort of hoping to take her through, if things go well, is like her tempo run day and sort of her interval run day are going to slowly almost like regress as she gets closer to, or maybe just like more frequently like deload those or like pull them back a little bit in terms of volume or just paces, so that that long run can just basically keep getting built up. So it's like she's going to get closer and closer to running, you know, not a marathon, but 20 plus miles in training. And then it's like, even as she gets really close within like a month, she might get like one long run on a Saturday. The next Saturday might just be like an easy 70 to 80% of that, maybe even less, maybe 60% in terms of total mileage of that. And then the next week's high again. So it's like she doesn't even get the long run every week then. It's like, if you go run 20 miles, you're probably going to need 2 weeks to recover from it. But it's like, you have to do that almost because like that's what you're preparing to do.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things a lot of people will ask is like, well, how much weekly mileage should I do, or how long should my long runs be? And that's where that conversation comes up, where it's like, okay, this is like generally the ballpark for people. But it also depends. Like, if you're going to be run down to the point where you can't even recover within 72 hours, and it's going to wreck the remainder of the week, then you're going to have to, go up and down from that. But there are going to be cases where you're going to need to kind of simulate what race you're doing, and you don't have to go the full marathon, but you're going to have to go like a big chunk of it, which may require a little bit more recovery time. So having those alternating weeks, kind of like how I know you've done this before, and I've taken on this approach as well, is having like the A and B weeks with training, where it's, maybe one week has this kind of skeleton, and then this week has this kind of skeleton, then you go back to the A week. And I think that's also, I haven't done it with running, but I think that would actually be really good. That'd be an interesting approach to take. Yeah.
What I know Chris kind of does with some of his skeletons, and what I actually use this more, like typically I used to like put like two like rows of cells, and it'd be like A week and B week. And now it's usually like I keep it as one row, but I'll have like odd and even weeks. So it'll be like, for example, so I don't make this too general, it's like for the woman I was just talking about, as we get like 4 weeks out or 6 weeks out, it might be like odd weeks, long run on Saturday, building to 22 miles, let's just say. And then it's like even weeks are like, a 60 to 90 minute run at zone 2 to zone 3 or something, where it's like kind of like high-low almost.
Yeah.
A similar example that would be like strength training based. I've been doing this for Sam right now. One of the things we need to push forward with him is like his deadlift max. So it's like, if he does that every single week, he builds like a rep max. That's like a big ask, just from like the nervous system, the joints, everything, right? Where it's like, okay, if I want him being able to go through like a 20-week progression of maxes, essentially, which is actually what I'm taking him through. It was like deficits, like 1, 3, 2, 1 RM, deload, and then it was like from the floor, 3, 2, 1, and then it was like from 1 inch blocks, 3, 2, 1. So it's just like this really long linear progression. It's like, if I have him do that every single week, even if there's a deload in there, that might not be great for like joint health and again, nervous system, everything else. So it's like, what we put in for him is like, okay, that's 1 week. And then the other week, for somebody who's like a CrossFit athlete, not a power lifter, it's like, okay, let's do some like sub-maximal like rep work in either just like a strength setting where it's like touch and go or even dead stop, or then like put it into like a Metcon and have it be like more like Metcon weight. So like 225 to 315 range with like chunks of work in there where he's accumulating his reps that way. And that just allows like the whole system of his training to be a little bit more like sustainable, while still making sure you're touching on the thing long term so it keeps going up. Whereas what I find a lot of people do is like they'll be like, all right, I need to get better at deadlifts, so I'm going to put them in every week, and they like do that for like 3 weeks, and then it's like they ran out of runway and there's nowhere for them to go with their progression because they started at like 100 miles an hour, and then they're just like, okay, all right, on to the next thing. And it's like they don't like stay on the thing that they need to actually adapt to. So if the challenge in like long running is like, how do you make long running sustainable for someone who's like not used to that volume? It's like, you got to give them more rest time. So like move to like that AB style.
Yeah. And I think that's like, there's two things that I think of with this approach. Is the first part of it could be like a psychological thing, right? Where sometimes having a little bit more variety with something so mundane like running can help, where there's, you know, a little bit more things to look forward to versus every week. It's like, oh, add an extra mile. Oh, add another mile. And it just gets boring. And like you were
After
saying,
about 3
though,
weeks of that, you're like, I know where this is going, and I don't want.
Yeah, it's like, all right, this is enough.
Yeah.
But another thing too, you were saying like the long game, and you know, Sam is definitely one where he's in the long game with CrossFit. Like he's been progressing and taking his time with like he really follows the process. And I think runners, especially if someone's coming from having no running background or a recreational running background, has to do the same thing as well, because like CrossFit, running could really do damage to the body, you know, and cause a lot of injuries, because it is just naturally like a high load. It requires a lot from the body. And if you're taking a short-term approach to it and you're just building every week, or just having this very like short, intense progression, you're bound to, you know, run into some type of barriers that might prevent you from running. And CrossFit is very similar, where it's like you have to take this long-term approach, especially with movements like deadlift or whatever that cause a lot or require a lot from the body. So yeah.
I think I guess like that's the challenge with a lot of, I mean, this has always been the case. I mean, but even for something that's more, I don't want to say simple, but less variables, like running, right? Versus CrossFit. CrossFit's like crazy because there's so many things that you should be doing. And you need to be practicing novel formats all the time so you know what the heck you're doing when you actually get out there, because it's going to be a novel task. But with something that is more controlled, like running, it's like still like a templated program is a challenge, because typically people can't be objective with it. Well, no one can be objective with themselves and like adapt a program. And maybe we'll get there with like AI or something if people want to trust that. But like to be able to like put in feedback and to like have someone actually look at it and be like, this is what we need to be doing. Versus just like, again, a program that treats you like a robot, where it's like, all right, 10% more, here we go. 10% more. Okay, this is your week to deload, even though you feel great. Like,
yeah. I played around with one 2 years ago at this point, and it was a few months of me just like programming for myself for running. I was like, let me follow this like template program, and it was it's an app, so it's the Runna app.
Yeah,
and so
I get
was
ads
like,
for that actually. Because I checked it out one time when I had an athlete who had done it, and now I get ads for them all the time.
Yeah. Targeted ads. Those are great. And so I tried it out for a little bit, and yeah, it did not work for me, right? It's like you put in your information, how much you want to run, your experience, your like if you had a target race or whatever. And I remember I pulled it up, and then, you know, I had everything for the next X amount of weeks. So I kind of put it into a spreadsheet so I could see it all at once. And the progressions weren't like horrible. Like, you know, there was reasoning behind them. It seemed like AI did a good job with that, but it didn't work well with me. Like it got to a point where it was asking me to do something, and I'm like, I physically cannot do that. Like I need a deload, or I need to like back off, but like that intensity is just like, I'm not a robot that just can go up like this. Like there's fluctuations and there's things that I have to consider that, you know, AI can't detect. So I only stuck with it for a little bit just because I wanted to try it out. But yeah, and I realized I had to kind of do my own programming, and because I have to look at things beyond just like this bubble. Yeah.
So I guess like, if we just have like a recreational runner listening and they're like wanting to increase their running volume, just generally, right? Say like, I want to be a better runner. Maybe I'll sign up for a half a year from now or something, right? It's like very general goals. And say they're running twice a week right now. It's like, and again, say it's about 5K each time they go out. It's like, not knowing any other factors about them and their life, like, do you think you're going to increase like run frequency? Do you think you're just going to be like, hey, let's just keep kind of pushing out these runs? What do you think?
Yeah, I would increase run frequency just by like a day. And whether it's another 5K run or something a little less, I may do something a little less. Because if we're a year out from a half marathon, I think we have enough time to kind of play around the first few weeks to see how they're feeling with like a slow progression. And I'm always going to go slower than faster, like slower progression than faster, just to make sure like everything is feeling good and we're not doing too much. So maybe like another day of like a 2-mile run. Just like, hey, look, we're going to add some total weekly mileage by increasing the frequency, but we're not going crazy. We're not increasing it by a ton, right? And that actually goes against the 10% rule. If they're running 2 5Ks, that's about 6 miles a week, and then I'm adding another 2 miles on there. That's more than 10%, but I don't think it's because they're running so little per week, it's not like it's in a crazy increase.
That's like having someone who's like completely new to you come in and they're like, I want to start working out, I'm going to do it once a week. And you're like, no, bro, you're going to get in here 3 times a week, because otherwise you're not going to remember to do it once a week.
Yeah. Exactly. So, just adding that extra day. And I think it'll, from there, it's like, okay, that you added that extra day there, let's add maybe another mile that day. So now each day you're doing a 5K. Okay, now let's see how you're feeling. Let's try to increase one of these days to a little bit more than a 5K, make it your longer run. And then I would increase that frequency for a little bit before I start getting, a little crazy with other things like, let's do some interval work, some VO2 max work, some threshold work, blah, blah, blah. And I would just like increase mileage before I start digging into
that makes
those.
sense. You almost want to get like more targeted like with what you're doing with each of the run sessions. Otherwise it just all kind of becomes the same thing. So it's like, okay, we have to separate this out into different priorities within running. So yeah, like you're saying, like, okay, long run, intervals, tempo, whatever. So in order to do that, you have to have those different days. So like you can't do all that in the same day. So it's like, if you want to get to the point where you can do that, which is helpful, it's going to help you progress more optimally. It's like, well, then you have to increase your run frequency. And it's like, if you're already doing some of those things, it's like, okay, you might be able to turn up the dials on some of those and not have to like add another day in. And that might just be just fine for that person to be able to get them to like, this is actually going to increase your fitness on this, because like we could probably add a little bit more intensity on this day, or a little more, slowly increase the paces here that are going to get you closer to like what you actually want to hold in that, or your race or whatever. And it becomes, you can get more specific with it, and a little bit like you're just working on slowly increasing things versus like actually having something to work with almost.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to see like if they can handle that load. Like if they start getting some nagging injuries here and there, it's like, okay, there's some type of missing link. I don't know if your run form is just not great, if you're not strong enough, and we have to actually focus a little bit more on like strength training stuff to make sure you're more built and robust to run, and getting that down, maybe doing some running drills to improve your running form so that you can actually, go a little longer or a little bit more without crashing out and feeling pain here and there. And that's where things start getting super individual, but increasing it little by little will allow me to see like where they're at and what is needed in particular.
Yeah. And again, we've talked about this before, where it's like, it all sounds so confusing, but sometimes it's just so obvious when somebody's in front of you. It's like, like, bro, you're running 5 times a week. and this one back-to-back day, the second session just is always terrible. It's like, how about we do something different with this? Like, what a great idea, right? Like, that was super complicated to figure out. Like, duh, let's make it a low day. And that way we can push the intensity somewhere else. It's just like, where it's like the person's like, okay, I want to do a triathlon, so now we have other disciplines that we got to move into their week, and it's just super obvious about where you should start. Where it's like, I'm new to running. It's like, okay, start running. I'm running twice a week. Okay, add another easy day. Like, it's not really rocket science. It's just like sometimes people overcomplicate it, and it's also, again, obviously we do this, so we're biased, but like, it's just so much easier to have someone be like, this is what you need to be doing, and they're experienced and have like the knowledge of where you can actually trust them. It's like, okay, now I feel good about it. Yeah.
And you were saying like some of the things seem obvious, right? Like, I think one of the things I see a lot is they mention they have Achilles pain or foot pain or something like that, but we still need to build their aerobic capacity. Okay, we don't have to run. Let's hop on the bike for a day or two, and we'll add that in instead of doing like an extra run. We'll take away a run and we'll do a similar type of session in terms of intensity, but on a bike or elliptical or whatever. And it's like, okay, we can still get the volume in that way, right? So it seems kind of obvious, but it's not. And I was actually talking to someone yesterday about this as well, about when I first started working out. It's like, I just started going to the gym. I had no plan, and I just naturally gravitated towards upper body lifts. And so every day I went in, we were doing some type of chest press, like chest press machine. Like every time I went in there, I was working out like 3 times a week. Every single time I was doing the chest press machine. I did the Stairmaster. I did a bunch of lat pull downs. Like, I barely touched any legs, right? Like maybe the calf machine here and there. And that's what I did for like, I want to say a good like almost year. And during that year, I still got a lot stronger. I put on the weight that I needed to put on. That was my main goal when I first started. And so I put on the weight I needed to put on. I got really strong. I was already benching for a young female who, at the time, I weighed 90 pounds. I gained like 30 pounds. And, it was I was eating a lot more and stuff, so I ended up getting to 120, and I was already benching like 1 time my body weight after the first year. So that for a young female with only 1 year under her belt, like that's pretty decent. And that's from doing something that had absolutely like no sound principles behind it. I just went in and did what I like. And I think a lot of times that's kind of like with running too. It's like, you're going to go in and you just got to do it more, and you'll get better. And then you'll like pay attention to things, but depending on how you feel, so that you don't wreck yourself. Just be careful as you do that.
Yeah. I feel like some of that stuff you can get away with also because you're just young. Like,
exactly.
I ran for literally as long as I can remember. Like, my parents were both runners. I guess more so my mom, but both my parents. And so it was just like very normal for like to see my parents put on their shoes and go out the door for a run. So it's like I did that sometimes too as a kid. And I very specifically like remember that we had this different like my parents had different courses mapped out. One of them was like a mile turnaround from our house, so it was 2 miles total. And like literally I would like walk down our lane, get to the mailbox, and take off in my pace for my 2 mile, come right back up, walk up the lane, and that was it. Literally, I walked for like 100 meters, did a full effort 2 miles, and then would walk back. And I would do that like 4 times a week. And I got way better. like if I did that now, I would be so wrecked. Like I'd be like trashed. I did that like twice. I'd be done.
Yeah, I would not recover for the next session. I would not be able to do it. Yeah, I should have put that disclaimer. I was very young at the time, so I was able to do chest press every day. That would not work right now. But my point is, you got to do it more to get better.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, like that, those are, are the, like, you know, ideal examples. But the point being, like, if you just start, like, you're gonna start to figure things out for yourself. And it's like, is it perfect? No, it doesn't need to be. No. So, and then
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like there's also people who are just like less risk tolerant than probably you or I. Like I'm, you know, when I'm deadlifting heavy, I'm not thinking about blowing out my back.
Yeah.
Like, I realize that there's a possibility that if I snatch, I could drop it on my head, but I don't care. Like,
Yeah.
and I think some of that's just like an athlete mindset, but I also think that there's just people who are more like risk adverse. So like, I think also like if you're one of those people, like, just kind of like acknowledge that and just be like, maybe that's like, okay, I should work with somebody at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's good to have, if you're like a risk adverse person, like having that sounding board just to make sure, like, it gives you that extra level of like comfort of like, okay, I can do this. Yeah. And, you know, I've mentioned this to you a bunch of times, but, with running and like the sickle cell I have, I kind of do have anxiety around certain sessions, like VO2 max sessions or like super high intensity, because I'm like, what if I have an episode and my heart gives out and blah blah blah, like, so I do like kind of, you know, I have this anxiety around it, which kind of prevents me from like really pushing myself. But I also do, I'm lucky enough where like I work with people and I'm surrounded by people who are, you know, in the strength and conditioning world and fitness world, and they know all about this stuff. So I can kind of like ping pong ideas off of them and make sure like get a little bit more comfort from that. And I think people naturally will have that anxiety around running, where it's like, because of the injuries that are very prevalent in that field, because of stories that they've heard, because they've seen a race and at the end of the race people are falling to their knees and passing out, and so they're like, oh my god, like that's gonna happen to me, or it's super, like, it's very likely, so I got to be careful with that. So kind of calming people down. It's like, okay, you just got to listen to your body as you're doing this and as you're progressing, and progress slower than faster, right? And then that'll kind of like bulletproof most things.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like that's another thing that I've probably shifted a little bit, and when I probably advise people if they're like, you know, constructing their own training, it's like, just take it easy. Like, not easy in terms of like, don't go easy all the time, but like progress yourself slowly. It's like, there's no downside to slowly increasing things. Like, you're going to be able to train consistently for longer, and you're probably going to adapt better to it than if you're aggressive and then give yourself no runway, run into a brick wall, and then have to change directions and pivot with your training, which I feel like is more common for people to do if they're constructing their own training.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've done that a lot in the past for myself and for athletes, was like, I feel like now I start on what would have been like a 2-week regression, almost 1 to 2 week regression of where I started people for progressions before. It's like, started them at this percentage, at this loading, at this whatever, and it's like, let's just back up and give their body a little bit of time to like work into the progression almost. So it's like, yeah, for me, as I've gained experience, I feel like it's actually been like, you know what, it's okay not to be maximal all the time. Like, you're actually setting your physiology up really well to actually adapt when you start doing more intensive stuff.
Yeah. And I think people hate to admit it, but their like bodies can't recover quickly or can't handle a lot of load. And I kind of had that. I struggled with that a bit because I wanted to be like really good at CrossFit and be able to do all these things, and I've just come to realize like I personally can't handle the load as a CrossFit Games athlete can, right? Like, there are those factors, and I think people have a hard time believing that they can't do it because they see someone else do it. And then, we go down a rabbit hole here where it's like, well, I do think hard work can get you far, but you also have to be realistic with what you can handle. And people hate to, admit that it's a long road and you can't progress super fast, and your body can't handle doing all these things as you originally, when you write out your plan, you're like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to progress by this time. And it's like, well, you're going to need some time to recover and do this. And then, you have life stuff come up, and just take it easy, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like for myself, right now I'm doing 10 sessions a week. And it's like, if I were to start at that place with CrossFit training, it would not have gone well. Because I wasn't like a CrossFit athlete when I started, right? Where it's like, what needs to change is like, your training almost just needs to like match your identity in a way where it's like, Day is now a runner. So she runs frequently. When she runs, she can run at a decent pace or a decent amount of mileage when she does it, because you're a runner now. Whereas like a couple years ago, you weren't a runner. Like that wasn't what you did. So like you couldn't have jumped into that kind of training. Where it's like a similar thing, like even for myself, it's like, okay, if I wanted to, like if I just back up, it's been like, okay, when I started off, like I was learning how to do CrossFit, which okay, I'm learning how to do CrossFit. Let's just do some classes, and then you can start mixing some stuff in. It's like, okay, maybe I go for a run in the morning twice a week, and it's like, okay, well, I signed up for a competition. Maybe I do a double day on these 2 days, and it's like 3 years later, I'm doing double days on most days, and it's like now I'm doing a double day every day, and it's like now I'm a little bit more like serious about it, and it's like, okay, now I'm adding a little bit more intensity in each of these sessions, and it's like that's so spread out that it's like you don't even like realize it, and you're just like, well, this is kind of what I need now, because like this is who I am. Where it's like a very similar thing with running. It's like if you rush that process, nothing good's gonna happen. Like it's just like, hey, like I'm the person who I don't sit around my entire week. It's like I get out the door and I run 3 times a week. That's who I am right now. And like that's a helpful thing to like reorient your identity around that. And then it's like, okay, I signed up for this race. Okay, I should be prepared for it. So like let's maybe start to build out the mileage in one of these. And it's like, I have 2 more races this year. Like maybe I'm starting to become a runner now. Like I'm a recreational runner. And then it's like, okay, I do like 6 races a year and I start to fly for some of them. And like my training's getting more serious. Like, oh, I'm kind of a serious runner now. It's like, I don't know, like not that people have to follow that path where it's like, obviously there's a cap to things, and I, for myself, like I'll start to regress and I'll probably only do 8 sessions a week that are, with some intensity or whatever, right? But it's like, just kind of meeting yourself with where you're at and like who you actually are as a person probably makes sense.
Yeah. And I think that's a super helpful like mentality to have, is realizing that, because I know for me, I tend to see a shiny object and I'm like, I want to do that too. So like, oh, like there's a powerlifting meet in a few months, maybe I should do that. And then kind of checking myself where it's like, okay, I'm not a powerlifter. Like I haven't been doing that type of training for a bit. If I want to wreck myself and potentially get injured, then I could sign up for that and try to handle both, but that's not what my priority is. And I have to focus on what my priority is. And right now it is running and just keeping general strength, but it is running is the priority.
Right. Or if you say like, okay, I'm Day and I want to be a hybrid athlete and like do a bit of both, it's like then you're gonna have to make sacrifices on some of the run stuff so you can start to powerlift a little bit more. It's like
exactly.
Or you're a runner who signed up for a powerlifting meet, and it's like, can you do that? Let's
see how it goes.
Of course you can do that, right? Like,
yeah,
you're not gonna lift super heavy because you're a runner, right? But it's just like, I think what you said is so true. Like people just kind of like want it all. They think they can be a little bit too greedy with their training, and it's like you just need to be honest with yourself about what you can handle. The one girl just came to me and she's like, I'm thinking about signing up for a half marathon the month before I do the marathon. I was like, okay, we can pick one of the 2 that we're gonna be like ready for, because I don't think we can do them both. Like and try to like PR, and it's like. Again, I think this is for everybody, but I feel like a lot of people in our culture is just like they want it all. It's like you can't have it all. So sorry.
Yeah, so sorry. No, I totally agree, and I think they'll see somebody on YouTube or Instagram that is able to do some crazy feats, and they're like, well, like Tia Claire Toomey did at High Rocks and won the CrossFit Games. And it's like, yes, Tia Claire Toomey.
You know what her
did.
life looks like?
Yeah.
She's a team of people around here, and she wakes up and that's all she does, and then she goes back to bed.
Exactly. So.
She's also special.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Well, sweet. If people got follow-up questions, let us know.
Yeah.
Reach out today. Message her. Hire her as your coach.
Cool.
Cool. Thanks for doing this. It was fun.